LAProbate.com with our weekly Probate Weekly, Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Eastern. And I am excited and honored and, I don't know, thrilled to have today. We have guests regularly, almost every call. But today, not just a guest, but really the guy who I had been pointed toward probate before I met him, but really launched my probate business from a great idea or suggestion, really into the business become the last 3 years, changing my life. Really excited to have with us today, Chad Corbett. How you doing, Chad?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be part of your audience.
So, I know we've talked about your story. Where are you coming from today? Where are you physically located?
I just got back from Florida. I've been in Ponte Vedra at a legacy event. I'm in Pocahontas County, West Virginia, the middle of nowhere.
And when Chad says the middle of nowhere, he really means the middle of nowhere. For me, I think Van Nuys is the middle of nowhere, or Encino is the middle of nowhere. We live in
I'm in the world's only remaining radio quiet zone. We have the world's largest fully steerable radio telescope. No cell phones, no microwaves. I live in a fifth wheel camper because I choose to. But there's one cell tower about a quarter mile from here, and that's it. That's all the government will allow. So it's a very, very rural place. This is where I came from. And after traveling the world and creating geographical and financial independence, it's where I ended back up. So for now, anyways, I bought a probate house here at 15 cents on the dollar. It's being completely rebuilt, and I'm sticking around while that happens. And who knows where I'll end up in 6 months. It'll be a different story.
But you have been all over the place this past year. I mean, part of living in a fifth.
Lived in 27 states last year. Yeah, in the last 12 months, I lived in 27 states. I also spent $27,000 net. Eat gourmet food every night. Like my investment strategies and really probate has afforded me that. I built my career on it, and so I pretty much live where I want and do what I want with whom I want.
So, I know that most people on the call today, because you're a very popular person, we got a huge turnout. Most people have heard your story or been in your coaching to some degree, but give those who haven't maybe a brief overview of, how did you get into real estate, and then how did you end up in the probate space specifically?
Well, I blame the FBI for me being in real estate. So I went to school I started training for the FBI at 15 years old through the West Virginia State Police Academy. I started training. I was thinking small. I started training to be a West Virginia State Trooper at 15. By the time I got to college, I realized, thanks to a lot of professors, I realized I probably could swing for the fence and get a Fed job. So I was recruited by the FBI out of college. I can't hear 6,000 megahertz. I didn't get into the military when I wanted to go. They wavered me in, and then they changed their mind and offered me a desk job and a big fat pay raise. And that was the day I lost trust in the Department of Justice and left. So that's what got me into real estate. I went from one career path that I'd worked for, the formative years of my young adulthood. And all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, I don't own a computer. I don't know anything about business. I owned a fencing company that had about a 90% profit margin, but it was incredibly difficult work. So I decided to get into real estate for money, and I decided to stay in real estate for people. I started selling land, and here in Pocahontas County, West Virginia, I had 24 closings in the first 4 months, and I didn't even know how to fill out a contract. But I knew how to sell real estate. And then InterWest, the resort company that owns Snowshoe Mountain Ski Resort, they recruited me. And from there, I saw the writing on the walls in 2007. I jumped to an indoor water park project in East Tennessee. And in 2008, as 2008 began to set in on us, all of our preferred lenders decided to bail on us and just leave us high and dry. They pulled all finance products. So then I became a capital raiser, and I managed the closings for about $1 billion worth of pre-sold real estate between Tennessee and Hawaii. And at 29, I became firmly unemployable, and I walked away from everything. I was living on Conopay Beach, making $250,000 a year, and I walked away from it all. And that's where several months, better part of a year, like a gap year, and traveling through all the national parks with my dad and my dog, and doing a 2-month motorcycle trip in the Canadian backcountry by myself, kind of made me who I am today. And that's, I have lived my life on 3 rules since then, or 3 principles. It's always help others more than yourself, always turn net 6 figures so you can live and give the way you want and be able to run it from anywhere in the world with an iPhone. And that's really shaped, my career as a benevolent entrepreneur was really born right there in the middle of nowhere by myself after 2 months of not talking to another human. And since then, I've just had fun building stuff on purpose. So I co-founded a company called All the Leads. We provided probate data to 3,149 counties nationwide. Last year, I sold my shares in that company because I wanted to focus more on this conversation about the educational side of probate and how we serve these people, not how what kind of damn letter you send or the logistics of marketing. I'm more people focused and solution focused, and education gives me that opportunity to create a larger impact, I think, than trying to sell marketing products.
Was a lot to unpack there, and I just want to say that the lifestyle you're living is the things I try to avoid being. Right? You're out in nature, catching fish and cleaning them, and cooking them, and I desperately cling to my lifestyle here in the city, going to find restaurants local. But I'm glad you enjoy it, and your smile says it all. So, but I'm all about freedom, and for me today, my freedom is my grandson's here in the house. My wife is retired now and is a full-time nanny, and I'm the nanny's helper, or I try to help a little bit. And I want to be able to run a business where we can travel with them for a month or two at a time. So we'll see how that works out. So probate is such a great area in that I think, and especially hearing your story, the first inclination is the opposite of what you talk about, right? When I hear people marketing probate, not you, not all the leads, and we have a mutual friend, Jen, not them, but most of the other people who tell me about probate is it's easy. And they'll tell me that you can make a lot of money because they're desperate, and so you come in and you take advantage of it. You buy it cheap, you fix it, you make all this money on the back of other people. And I've never heard you say anything close to that. I think that's what got me excited, was that other type of probate wasn't me. I knew there was something that would work. I liked law. I liked going to court, and I heard from you about how you can actually make money by being focused on serving other people. So explain to me, what was it that helped you turn around that scenario in probate in specific, where it otherwise has been just the center, I think, of greed?
So I chose to move from Maui to Roanoke, Virginia, a town where I knew nobody. I literally just chose it based on demographics and housing data. It seemed like a good place to start a real estate investment company. I had 4 real estate licenses. Wasn't really interested in using any of them anymore. I thought I wanted to be an investor to achieve that lifestyle, to reach those 3 principles. What I found is I was violating principle number 1 as a wholesaler. I was good at wholesaling. It just didn't feel good. When I was making 60, 50, 60, 70 cents on the dollar offers that were very selfish, I wasn't looking to provide a solution. I was looking to get their equity. And I had built my career negotiating the price up on millionaires and billionaires. And all of a sudden, I found myself sitting in the only asset the family had, trying to ethically, but aggressively get it at the lowest price. And I will say I never tried to use fear tactics and scare people into doing it. I explained the dollars and cents, like I explained it in the financial aspects of, I'm taking risk that you're not willing to. You made bad decisions. I didn't. And I can take this problem and turn it into profit. It's unlikely that you'll be able to. Regardless of how honest I was, how much integrity I pursued that with, I went home at the end of the night and felt like shit about who I was and how I was spending my time. So one of those nights, as I was beating myself up, I said, what if 9 out of every 10 leads doesn't become an appointment? And it's like, it's time for you to take accountability for that. So rather than me saying, this is a junk lead, you're not the right person for me, it's a numbers game and you're not ready. I took self accountability for that. I'm like, how can 9 out of every 10 motivated sellers be a junk lead? How can that not be my fault? I have a lack in skill set. They're not lacking anything. They have a problem that needs solved. Someone can solve it. And I'm obviously not the guy, because I had to tell 9 people no. So I challenged myself to learn to monetize every real estate conversation. In doing that, I started doing lease options subject to wrap, owner financing, contract for deed, land contracts, short sales, you name it. I went ahead and got my Virginia real estate license. And one day in the spring of 2013, I believe it was, a lady named Pam called me, and she was obviously crying. And I let her speak, and then I started to ask questions. Now, I will say this was the end of my selfish mindset. I had purposely chosen this neighborhood from 6,000 miles away on an island based on what I could learn about the city from a distance. It was, a village inside of a city. It was kind of its own standalone neighborhood, even though it was in city limits. And it's where I chose to rent. And I beat the landlord up and negotiated my rent down to half, but I chose to rent for the first. And so when I got the phone call and as soon as she gave me the address, I'm like, yes, because it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in that neighborhood, brick ranch, like the quintessential, best deal in Roanoke. So I prepared for this appointment with very selfish intentions. I'm going to buy this house for myself. What happened? I didn't expect. I walked into the house. I looked Pam in the eye. It was obviously she was distressed. There was a Remax sign propped up against the house. I had no idea it was on the market. It was an expired listing, 12-month listing, no showings, no offers. Um, all the personal property still in the house, shrubbery grown up, wasn't in bad shape. It just obviously wasn't well kept. Um, and Pam told me the story. Her mother had a massive stroke the night before. Her father's probate was still open. The house transferred on death because they held title as tenants in the entirety with rights of survivorship. And at this point, I didn't know a heck of a lot about probate. So we walked through the house. I asked to take the home tour. I noticed some really nice, like obviously handmade oak furniture, some other things of value, sewing, like the old Singer sewing machine tables, things like that. And we got back to the living room, and she was just obviously distressed. Her mother was in the hospital. They were discharging her to either to home or to a rehab facility. And because she had this asset, she didn't have any cash. She had very little cash and lots of net worth because of the house. So that was the moment for me. That was when I looked Pam in the eye and I'm like, the hell with your own selfish intent. You're here to serve. And that's when I took my realtor hat and my investor hat and I threw them both out the front door of that house. And I haven't used them since. I'm Chad, and I focus on the people and the situation until I understand what solution can solve their problems. And that happened in Pam's mother's living room that day. So I gave her options. I went with the intent of making an offer, $88,000 cash, closing in 3 days, because I had found a title company that I already built some social capital with, did them some favors, sent them referrals. And I knew that as long as we didn't hit any big title snags or encumbrances, I could get it done. So she had, typically I look for what is this person's objective? Do they need the maximum amount of money, or do they need money fast? In Pam's scenario, she needed both. She needed as much money as she could possibly get to pay for her mother's long-term care, but she needed it now because the hospital was discharging her. So that's the moment where I just put my own interest aside and I said, do what's best for her. And without even preparing for this, what came out of me? Option one, cash offer 88,000. You saw the physical flinch. It hurt her. So I quickly moved on. I didn't try to transition and I the way I used to. This time I said, all right, listen, hear me out. There's multiple options here. This is a choice for you. No one's forcing you into anything or asking you to do anything. Option two is we will take this back to the MLS, but we'll do it as is, where is, which means we can leave the personal property here if you want, or you can take it if you'd like, but it is as is, where is, no contingencies. It's just it's a price above what I'm able to offer you in cash. And we should expect a closing sometime, ratified contract within a week, a closing within 30 days. And her response was, 30 days? I don't have 30 days. And I said, hold on. We have options here. You're going to make a choice. Option three, was we would take the personal property that I saw that looked to have value. We would liquidate that. We would use that for a cosmetic rehab. We would maximize the retail value and take it back out as a conventional listing where we could maximize every dollar that we could get. And I gave her a timeline at that time. Median days on market was 93 in Roanoke. Most of the properties that I had actually listed were going and ratified within 7 days, and I was closing most of them within 30. But I gave her a 60-day timeline for that maximum retail price. Option 4 was everything in option 3. So we clear the house out, we sell the personal property, we do the cosmetic rehab. But instead of going back to MLS, because I understood creative financing and I knew just enough about probate that I could connect the dots. Husband passed away, house transferred to wife outside of probate. Wife had a full power of attorney. Pam, the daughter, was the power of attorney. So I had someone sitting in front of me that had the authority to sign whatever I want them to. So I was able to connect that chain of title through there in my head because I understood real estate law. I understood probate at some level. But most importantly, because I listened, I came up with this solution. Solution number 4 was everything in number 3, but we actually take it out to a list of tenant buyers, people who had failed to get financing to purchase a home, that were interested in credit repair, that were interested in home ownership, that were interested in using the lender that I had partnered with, the credit company that I had partnered with, and were willing to do whatever it took to become a homeowner. They had been heavily vetted. So I put it out as a lease with option to purchase. Within 3 days, we had 4 people literally in tears on the phone when I told them I wasn't sure who I was going to accept. 3 of them filled out a full mortgage application, and actually they didn't believe they could qualify for loans, but because I focused on really building a strong relationship with my lender and understanding what conventional financing was in the marketplace, I turned those 3 into conventional buyers, closed them all in the next 60 days. I had 3 buy-side closings. The one that I chose couldn't qualify for conventional financing because of an $80 utility bill they left unpaid when they moved away from Pennsylvania. Retired Navy veterans, full benefits, they had, honorable careers. They wanted to own this house more than anything. And like my heart really wanted them to get it because I knew I could get. The other people had 3,000 options. They had one. It's not that many homes are offered with creative financing. So we engaged. I was scared to death because they were veterans and they were using VA eligibility. And I had to clear a VA appraisal on the front end of a 3-year lease option. And I didn't know if that was possible. And I was open with them. I said, let's try it. So I took an $8,000 option fee up front, $1,100 first month, $1,100 last month. We did the cosmetic rehab. Then we did this, but they move in. And they were amazing tenants. Pam got enough money to pay for the long-term care for that first month, which gave her an opportunity to liquidate some investments, which gave her the cash to actually support that long-term care until we got the house sold, and then the proceeds were used there. The couple still lives there. I was by the house a couple of weeks ago. I still have a house in Roanoke. They still live there. They're very active in Boy Scouts of America, volunteers, and they love it. So that evening, instead of going home and beating myself up, I went home and I outlined the rest of my career, I suppose, at least to this point. I went home and I thought, what in the hell did you just do? Like just by that shift in mindset of pursuing real estate for my own selfish intent and pursuing real estate for the outcome of the customer. At this point, it wasn't even a client because I wasn't her fiduciary. I did that deal as an investor, and I took a consulting fee for basically showing her how to put the strategy together. It didn't even pass through my brokerage. So that was the deal that changed the way I think about real estate in general. But it was also the deal that made me realize what a valuable list probate was. Because if you approach these families with that level of service, with options, you allow them to make a choice instead of trying to jam your one selfish monetization method down their throat, then this becomes fun and easy. And that's what I was looking for in a career. So I took that, I ran with it. I built a real estate team. I tried to teach it. I tried to get others to do the same things I did. I don't think they believed in the offer. And at the same time, co-founded a company called All the Leads. We built an army of researchers. We were in courthouses nationwide, and we took my methodology and started to apply that through free training. And then it became obvious that even if you give free training and give away all your best advice for free, there's a need for a course where it's in kind of a linear it's a linear progression. So that's where Probate Mastery was born, out of necessity. And I created this course in the summer of, I think 2014 was the first time I actually offered the class. And I've literally built my career off of that appointment. So in 2016, early 2016, I actually stepped out of production. I was terrified. I thought I would lose credibility because, I don't have every day. I don't have every week. I don't have a brand new deal story of my own to tell. I used to if you go back to All the Leads and listen to the early calls, usually each week I would share my own scenarios, my own deals as a practitioner. It terrified me to step away from that because I thought, well, no one's going to trust me. They're going to, hell, Mike Ferry sold real estate for like 3 months, I think, in his entire career. But I thought people would attack me for, being, oh, those who can't do teach. What I found out was I threw myself out of the pot and into the fire. So rather than dealing with the problems and transaction engineering in one market, all of a sudden I was dealing with it in 3,149 markets. I was putting myself on a live phone call, unmoderated, to help everyone throughout the country. And I was doing it in real time, without preparation, without moderation. That sharpened my axe. I became a much, much more knowledgeable, much more professional, coach in probate, because I was willing to put myself out there, and I'm vulnerable when I need to be. I'm strong when I need to be. But what I found is I had the opportunity to actually dig into everything from a brand new real estate professional business all the way up to teams doing over 1,000 transactions a year. And I was able to get literally hundreds and hundreds of scenarios on a weekly basis coming inbound at me that I had to actually transaction engineer and show how they could put together. And then at the same time, I wasn't able to do it. I couldn't just step in and do it. So it forced me to become a better teacher, to actually explain the principle and then lay it out in a step-by-step to do for that person who trusted me to be the one that got them their next deal. And that so far has been the most exciting part of my career. That currency of gratitude is far more valuable than any commission I've ever had. I live a pretty modest life. Money isn't nearly as motivating to me as the look on people's faces when they realize, oh my God, what he said is real and it actually works. These people actually love me. They think it's like, and what drove me in this space early on and still does is the sheer gratitude that comes out of these families when they realize you didn't take advantage of them. And sometimes it's not until you walk away from the closing table. They're just waiting for the other shoe to drop because it sounds too good to be true. And I love that gratitude that comes out of them when you get it right and they realize you're not trying to screw them. You legitimately just wanted to serve. So that's what's gotten me into probate and what's kept me here.
So after listening to this call, I have 2 admissions to make. We're totally opposite in some regards. For me, roughing it is a Holiday Inn. Okay, I would never go camping. I did it as a kid, but it's just not me. I'm a city boy. I grew up in the suburbs. Number one. Number two, your approach to the business is so different than mine because while you were not a realtor, you're an investor, wholesaler, and you had to manage it different ways. You did some brokering, but that wasn't your focus. All I've done is as a real estate broker. That's not true. Almost all I've done as a real estate broker. I do some investing. But the 2 things that we have that are common that struck me through the differences were, number one, you come from being a service first, right? And my first coach was Zig Ziglar, and he taught me that you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And so when you're coaching, in your case, thousands of people, in my case, today we have 100 on the call. I don't really worry about how I get paid on this deal. It all kind of works itself out. I focus on that first. If I take care of that, it works out. And that was you, that you were so giving your time. I signed up for training when you did it. The first time I took it 3 or 4 years ago, and you would commit to like 4 hours, like 5.5 hours later, you were still going in because you could tell that you wanted it. That was number one. And number two, the other thing that you really sold me on that I never really heard in this business, never, was a commitment to being of value, to being an expert, to being a master, to master the material. And in particular, one thing you did, I know I've talked to you about this, is you challenged us to go to court to watch the process for the court overbids. And I went there and I just found my niche, and it just worked for me. And it may not work for other people, and it's not important. I was committed to being of value. I was committed to being a master of something. And I could learn the court procedures, the court laws better than anybody. And I'm in LA, which is a big market. I've made that into a business that's changed my life and people around me as well. So I want to just acknowledge our style is like 180 degrees opposite. I talk fast and you're from Roanoke. You moved from Hawaii to Roanoke, and you said that, and like for 5 minutes, my mind's like, oh my God, he moved from Hawaii. He was there. Why did he go to? And you're saying with pride. And second of all, but you've touched so many people, and I really appreciate that. And that's why I've been involved with the program. I think ever since, at some level, on phone calls and coaching, and I'm still kind of in the latest time through the Probate Mastermind line, which is fantastic. So I know that by being involved with the program, there are a lot of people who call and they talk and they think about they're going to start, they're this or that. For the person who's listening or watching this, who they need to change their life, they need to make more money, they need to make more income, but they're just not ready to push in their chips and say, I'm going to do it. I don't know what it was that changed me or committed me to doing it with you. What do you think is the thing that kind of could push somebody? Or what is it when people do make that commitment? What do you see consistently is the thing that just pushes them to first stop worrying about the commission check and focus on the client, and second, to really learn the material, not just to learn how to market better?
So what I find, and like I told you guys, I've achieved financial independence. Money doesn't drive me that much anymore, as much as really just contributing. It's a fun way to keep score, and I'm not going to lie. I'd like to see how much I can make, but I also like to see how much I can give away. But what I end up doing, and with a lot of my free time, is actually coaching high level people who are further along than me in a lot of, based on several metrics. But I've kind of become the person in a lot of folks' lives when they are stuck, or when they're spinning their wheels, or they have uncertainty. They come to me and ask. What I've found to be most true in my own life, and what helps people break out of that or get out of the rut, or whatever it might be, is focusing on lifestyle first. And it's counter to what your teachers taught you, what your parents taught you, what your school principal said, what your college professor said, what the bankers say, what your employers say. Like, you're supposed to go be a good little American, get yourself in debt, get yourself a job, fall into line, buy yourself a house, get in some more debt, and then be stuck. And oftentimes when I find people are uncertain or they're afraid, it's because they built a damn trap for themselves, and it's not their fault. Like, if that stings for you, it's not meant to. It's meant to wake you the hell up and realize what, the life you created, you were conditioned to create that kind of a life as a North American citizen. That's what we're conditioned to do. And for me, that's if there's one thing at the end of my life I can say, is I want to create a bunch of unconventional, helpful fuckers that are just like, get out of my way, I'm going to solve your problems. So I start with lifestyle. If you're not sure what you want to do in the real estate space, if you're not sure what you want to do with a career in general, what kind of person do you want to be in 10 years? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world? How do you want people to perceive you, your family, your kids, your parents, if they're still alive, your broker, the bankers in the community, like anyone who sees you walking down the street? And for me, I want to be perceived as someone who's generous and helpful and contributes and has integrity. And candor is a virtue, and you say it like it is, call a spade, regardless of what the consequences might be. I think vulnerability is courage and strength, and that's how I want to be perceived. That's why I'm so candid. But I first, that started with, Chad, who are you in 10 years? At 29 years old, I have found the courage to hit the reset button. I was completely lost. I looked at gym franchises. I almost bought a Papa John's pizza franchise in Colorado, a lawn treatment franchise, a wine store, a convenience store, um, several businesses. I was in that phase, exactly the point where you were. I hadn't even decided to stay in real estate. I was just lost. And those three rules really set me on the path. So those three rules came from the feeling that I had in my heart that night sitting in Hartley Lake in British Columbia. And I'm like, what can I possibly do to be in control of this? How can I make sure that I can feel this way anytime I want? And that shaped the rest of my career and the way that I think about things. And so what I would say is start with lifestyle first. Who are you? Where do you live? How do you identify? And forget everything in the past. Like look forward and say, who do I want to be? Not who am I and what limitations am I subject to? Who do you want to be? There are no real limitations. If you get the clarity on what kind of person you want to be, there are really no limitations. You can creatively solve any problem, any obstacle. Um, and I've have the privilege of having some friends who have just accomplished amazing things when the deck was stacked against them. And that I just keep getting more reinforcement on that. We can change our story to benefit our weaknesses, or we can find ways through those with strength, and we can take away those perceived limitations. So for me, that answer was probably not expected, but it doesn't even have to do with real estate. It has to do with who you are in your heart, who you want to be in 10 years. And my advice is today, start behaving like that person. Take away the excuses, take away all of the, well, I would if I, quit shooting all over yourself, as Tony Robbins would say. I should do this, I should do that. Quit shooting and go do it. Get clear on who you are as a man, who you are as a woman, like how you want to be perceived, how you want to spend your time. Bill Gross is a great example of this. It's something I haven't ranted nearly as much as I have right now, but he's taken control of his time. He spends more time with his grandchild than he does working. And I like that warms my heart. I have cold chills just telling you guys that. Like, because I know what it means to him. And I know what it means to me to, I lost my father less than 4 months ago. That's a big reason why I'm right here. But I know what it's like at 39 years old to be able to say work is less important than family and travel and adventure and philanthropy and all the other things I was doing. I know what the freedom to just drop everything and come back to what's most important in your life in that moment. Like I created that freedom, and it all started with defining you get what you tolerate. So are you willing to tolerate a job? Are you willing to tolerate 7 days a week of having to always be switched on? One of the where these habits began with me, I turned off all notifications and badges on my phone almost 7 years ago. My telephone will never, ever tell me what to do. It's a tool and it's there when I need to use it. I don't have a hammer banging me up the side of the head every 15 minutes. So why the hell should my phone? A hammer is a tool. A phone is a tool. So I control it. It doesn't control me. And it's those little things like that, just little shifts in thinking that have allowed me to become a different person and to get a way different result. So that's what I would recommend is be very cognizant of what you're willing to tolerate. And maybe you sit down and actually write this down. Like, I will tolerate this list. I will no longer tolerate this list. And you can, that's a way to get it out of yourself if you're not clear already. I will not tolerate my phone ringing off the hooks. I will not tolerate working 7 days a week. I work 18 hours a day, but it's because I want to, and it's focused outbound effort. It's not inbound reactivity anymore. I've been posting since I kind of came out of hiding after my father's death. I run an investment club. I'm a fiduciary for my best friends and family in the world, basically a small family office. I run Magnum Opus Project, this company. I'm forming other companies. I still find time to go to conferences and connect with people that inspire me. And I choose to work 18 hours a day. Last week, I didn't work at all. I just took off and I went to hang out at the Players Club and saw the Sawgrass in Florida. but I have that option. So that's what I would say. More important than anything, it's not the strategy, it's not the niche, it's not the list, it's not the marketing, it's not your broker, it's not this and that. It's who are you in your heart and what are you willing to tolerate and not willing to tolerate. From there, the rest of it starts to fall into place and it's easy and fun. And that was, fortunately, I learned that at 29 years old and I did it. I think I was able, I had the privilege to get to know in the 2008, 9, 10 period when I was helping all those multimillionaires try to figure out how to close on a piece of real estate they had committed to and put 20% down on, years prior. I got the opportunity to hear their stories and meet them and get to know them. And some of them you've seen on TV, some of them are famous people, but I was able to really, look at their personal balance sheets and see who they were as people and see them at one of the lowest points. And I got to see who I didn't want to be. There's a lot of the people that we put on pedestals in our society as, oh, this guy's successful. He hates his life. And most of the people you think are rich are just in debt. They don't have two damn nickels to rub together if you call them to the carpet and ask to see a balance sheet. And that was just really clear to me. That wasn't the kind of person I wanted to be. So I have all the things I want in life. I buy them with cash. And the way I get that cash is to help other people get what they want, just like Bill said earlier. But the way I got into that mindset, I had to do my work and I had to shift my mindset from being focused on money and being focused on Chad to being, or current Chad, to being focused on Chad 10 years from now and what it takes for him to be that man of integrity that earns respect and has authority and influence and gives away 3 times more money at least than he spends on himself.
So I will confess, my phone's always on silent, and the only notification I get is Nest, because that's our front door when my daughter brings my grandson in, so I can go grab him before my wife gets him. But that's another story. No, thanks for sharing that. And I think it's so true that if you're clear on what you want and you focus on helping people, then it stops being a job. And I think so many real estate agents and maybe investors as too are in a job. They hire themselves and they're a lousy employee and they hate it. They hate their boss and they hate their employee. Versus if you love what you do, I mean, I don't work as much as you do hours at a time. I'm a little older than you. And so I have a schedule. I work about 40 hours a week. And when I work, but I like what I do. Like this is my job. Talking to you is kind of fun. I would talk to you for hours if I could get away with it. But we both have other things to touch people and help as well. So thanks for focusing that. Are there any, and I know somebody's gonna say to me, but Bill, I thought this was gonna be about how do you get probate listings? This is how you get business. I'm just, stop for 1 second. Those of you who are fighting this one, get it. This is all about, it starts with your mindset, it starts with your focus. And if you focus the right direction, you're gonna get there. This is where I plan to go with the call, but here we are. And I appreciate this because this is real for me too. This is where you got me excited 3 years ago. Where would you direct somebody who maybe doesn't hear enough of that message? Obviously, you do a call every week. And the only reason I'm on the call every week is because I schedule my life to exercise at noon my time, because that's when it's most pleasant to exercise. The sun's up, it's warm out, and so on. But you have a call every week. But somebody want to get some additional, you mentioned Tony Robbins. What other sources of material do you see people who need encouragement, need support, need camaraderie? Where do you see them going to get that kind of information? Or where do you go?
So I studied psychology in college, and I found that very valuable, but it was more traditional psychology. Tony Robbins has I didn't realize the impact that it made on my life. In 2013 or 14, I went to UPW, Unleash the Power Within, and not even knowing who Tony Robbins was. And several hours later, I was walking on 2,200 degree hickory coals and it didn't burn my feet. And when there's a lot of validation that comes through, like it's literally wired into your nervous system. When you step onto, you can feel the heat on your face and it doesn't burn your feet. And that to me was really interesting. I came home a few weeks later and all that, like the habit fell to the wayside. What was really shocking to me is I went back 3 years later. I was at a exit realty convention in Dallas, met a guy that I knew, and he's like, "Hey man, I got UPW tickets. You want some?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. I've been. Let's go." And what was really interesting that time, just 3 years later, I walked in. It didn't, like a room of 8,000 people didn't have the same impact because I'd experienced a lot more. But what I found really fascinating is all the things that Tony was talking about from stage seemed like so common knowledge to me. And at that moment, I realized what I was taking. I was taking for granted what I had taken away from that room the first time. That mindset and a lot of the knowledge I've shared with you tonight, I probably picked up there. Like Tony Robbins, I think might have been the first person I ever heard say, "You get what you tolerate, good or bad." And one of the things that he says is so impactful on my life is, we all have a tendency to blame. I'm going to blame you for this and you for this. Um, we typically blame for negative things. And one thing he said that was super powerful that really changed the way it was a big impact on my life is, you damn well better blame everybody that's helped you get here. We have a tendency to blame the people that have held us back. We have a tendency to blame ourselves, but you damn well better be blaming yourself for where you are. You damn well better blame your mom and blame your dad for keeping you alive and getting you through a public education. You damn well better blame the first person who took a chance on you and hired you to have a job. And it's those little subtleties and the changing the way I think and the way I perceive the world and the way I react to that emotionally have made a massive difference in my life. So Tony Robbins is obviously he's made a huge impact on a lot of lives. What I love about it, it's no bullshit practical psychology you can put in use today, and he can create change in instance because he understands. I mean, he studied all traditional psychology. He often references Maslow and Freud and all these other, traditional psychologists. But what he does better than anyone is he doesn't take it as theory, and he doesn't just parrot everything that he read from a book. He goes out, he puts this into practice, and he finds proof. He gets results, and then he finds a way to teach that to a common person. So that made a big impact on me. What I think made the biggest impact, it's hard to put any one thing, but from 2000 and really 2009, 2010 through about 2014, my goal was to read 100 books a year. So I would usually, and they were all nonfiction, mostly business, mostly real estate. It started with every book Robert Kiyosaki or whatever the name of his publishing company was, all the Rich Dad series, Rich Dad Publishing, I think. So Ken McElroy wrote a lot of those, who's also someone I greatly respect. But I started with those, and then I blew through. I decided to give myself an MBA from Amazon. I probably got an MBA for a few $100. I read finance books. I read accounting books. I read unconventional finance and accounting books. I read The Creature from Jekyll Island. I read In the Fed by Ron Paul. I started to realize how money really works and how the society we built is all based on money, but it's all a trap. And it just changed how I think. So it's hard for me to point to any one single resource without asking each person on this call a dozen questions. I keep a library where I have literally hundreds of books that built me, and everyone knows they have access to it. The way I hand out books, though, is I ask questions and I say, "Where are you in your life? What do you want to accomplish? Where do you feel stuck? What do you think could help you?" And then I start to suggest books. So it's difficult for me to say this is the one thing you should all go do, because it's situational. Like, it depends on where you are. You've got to look at, what area of your life are you neglecting the most? Is it health? Is it wealth? Is it happiness? Is it family? Is it work? And where do you really get real with yourself? Like, where do you think you really need to improve? That's where I would start. Because if you're struggling in your career and it's for some of you, we have enough people on this call. Somebody on here is struggling in their career because they screwed up their personal relationship, or it screwed itself up. Maybe the other party is to blame. But if things in life aren't in a relative balance, it can be difficult. So it's a hard question to answer because it's different for each person. But what I would say is shine a light on the area of your life where you and be real with yourself. Shine a light on the weakest area of your life and make a promise to yourself, make a commitment right here and right now. I will change. I will improve this about my life, and everything will start to take shape from there. But fix the things you're neglecting first. And the one thing I would, if there is one answer that would apply to everyone here, is if you're an excuse maker, and I mean at any level, if you say I was late because external factor, stop that bullshit right now because it's holding you back. Quit making excuses. Own your mistakes. Own when you're late. Own when you screw up a deal. Own when you misspell a word, no matter how large or small. Quit looking externally for happiness and quit looking externally for blame. Have self accountability. Say, I screwed up. I'm late. I screwed up. I did this X, Y, or Z. And your life, like that one little thing, your life will improve literally by tomorrow if you stop doing those things. If you quit, if you step up, be accountable and say, you know what, this is who I am. I screwed up. I'm getting better. But focus on your biggest area of weakness and quit making excuses in every area of your life and stuff. It'll change this week. I promise.
Again, somebody's going to say to me, I know I'm going to get this phone call or text or email. I thought it was about how to get more of these things. And again, it always starts with a mindset. Always. It's always the first step in the process. Changing your commitment, changing your focus, changing your belief as to who you are, your commitment to being who you are. And I also tell people, whenever they get involved in transforming something with their business or spiritual life or personal life, you need three things. I always feel like you have to have a coach or a mentor or a leader or somebody that you respect, they're willing to be held accountable to those standards. Second, you have to have a process or a book, the Bible, or a system. I'm religious. We have certain systems that you follow, or Mike Ferry, cold calling 3 hours a day, a system. And third, you have to have a community. You have to have other people who are on the path with you, both ahead of you to inspire you and behind you that you help to be of service. And you have to have those three things. And I know the thing that I admired about your program when I started 3 years ago and continue today is that you offer those three things, right? You have your coach. If you're interested in probate mastery, there's a link in the chat box. You also have a system that I think you customize, or the student customizes their format. And the third is there's a community. And I think I enjoy jumping in those phone calls or listening to them on replay because we need that. It's a lonely business when we get rejected or people push back. And I think those things, like you as a Tony Robbins, made a lot of friendships there when I was at those trainings over the years. So you hit on those key points, I think. Okay. So look, this has been great. And I feel like I talked to you forever. As long as we're not outside camping or in a sleeping bag.
Feels like no bears, no bears.
Yeah, no, I'm just really not. That's just not my thing. But that said, look, we got a bunch of people on the call. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand on the Zoom call. You can put a question in the chat box, and I'll try to get to it. I've got some great feedback, a lot of great job, and a lot of love for Chad. I think the most common thing was 100 books a year. I thought the same thing. I try to read a book a week. I end up about 40 books a year and a half for a long time. And I thought that was a lot. My wife was always complaining because we had to get rid of them and donate them to Goodwill and such. But that's an amazing thing. But here's your chance to ask a question. Chad is a master. Chad has changed people's lives. Those of you, and if you're new and starting out, this is your chance to get advice from somebody who's helped. I've seen hundreds of people, I imagine thousands of people, build their income, build their wealth for them and their family. So raise your hand and I will call on you, or put the question in the chat box and I will circle around to it. And I see a hand up and now I got to find the hand somewhere in there. Oh, there. Oops, I lost it. There. Who was that?
Julie has a question in chat.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Well, I was looking at the hand. Julie. So Julie asks, I have a client. I'm trying to close escrow, but it's a small unit with a tenant. Seller's trying to negotiate with the tenant, but they're dragging their feet to move out. Tenant's unit under city code violation. Seller has to fix it, otherwise have a penalty from the city. What options do I have? Ooh. And Julie, of course, that's going to depend on what city you're in, what county you're in. The rules in LA and LA County and LA City are way more stringent than virtually anywhere in the country. But in general, Chad, how do you approach dealing with situations when you have clients who have tenants? Maybe it's an heir, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's just a squatter. We have more of that in our business, I think, than any other type. How do you kind of coach handling that as a generic situation?
Never force homelessness on somebody to get a real estate deal done. We have a crisis in this country already. And it's easy for us, especially as business people, we can say, well, we took our risk and we have our responsibility to live up to. They need to live up to theirs. Kick them out on their ass. That's why I'm not a landlord, but I have tactics that I use to mitigate that and try to help. The first thing, Julie, if I had an opportunity, I would ask you the same questions Bill rolled out there. Where are you? What is the legal environment in that
Los
market?
Angeles. It's bad. She answered in the chat
Yeah,
box. I
so
saw.
you're in a tough spot.
Okay.
So the next most important question I have, if you want to answer in chat, is who is your end buyer? Are they an owner occupant or are they an investor? If they are an investor, you have an opportunity to actually go in, knock on the door, offer to improve the quality of life for that person by putting by rehabbing with them in place. We've done this in Tennessee in 93 unit apartment complexes. We literally do paint one day while they're at work and then put all their furniture back in. The next day we pull all the furniture back out and then we paint or we do flooring. And we've been able to rehab a 93 unit facility, partner with a local housing authority and raise rent 60%. So so she says the buyer is an investor. So again, the self accountability I showed you guys I had earlier, maybe your investor needs to realize that they're not thinking creatively enough, that this person maybe think of this tenant as an opportunity, not a problem. They might be a problem. I don't know. It's hard to tell how bad this situation is, but if he's incoming, he or she has an opportunity to go to this tenant and say, listen, I am assuming the lease that you defaulted on, and I'm willing to, rather than threaten you and kick you out and threaten you with homelessness, how about we just forget that ever happened? You and I create our own relationship and I come in and fix this place up for you. So all you have to do is give me this month's rent and I'll have my guys here in the morning. You'll have new countertops. When you give me next month's rent, you'll have the cabinets painted. When you give me the next month's rent, you have brand new carpet. When you give me the next month's rent, you get brand new appliances. So look at this as think of it, be empathetic to that tenant's problems. They're freaked out. They may be taking advantage, but most people, I've traveled the world and what I find is most people are innately good, but when their back is against the wall, they're going to do what they need to do to take care of their own basic needs. So move forward through your deal with that assumption that they're just doing what they need to do to get by. If that doesn't work, if being creative like that and offering value, okay. So Julie said he tried that. He went to an attorney. So, it's if your investor, if like maybe he needs tax advantages, maybe he needs to offset income on his 2021 tax liability, and he hasn't filed yet. He's probably going to file an extension. So maybe that loss isn't such a bad thing. That depends on his tax situation. I find the easiest way to get people out is usually if having them stay is not an option, if they can't or won't bring rent current, I try to get a social worker over there as a third party. So rather than me trying to be a housing advisor for someone who perceives me as the one that's potentially trying to kick them out, I'll bring in a neutral third party, give them permission to throw me under the bus and play good cop, bad cop, but get someone from the housing authority over there to let them know what their options are to rehome themselves. If they want to get aggressive or they want to get threatening or they want to be a smartass, then you can always fall back to your legal recourse and you can kick them out on their ass. LA makes that difficult, but that's my advice is usually, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said you catch more flies with honey than you ever will with a drop of honey than you will with a gallon of gall. And those aggressive tactics that a lot of folks teach and practice, you can go to that. It can always be a fallback position, but I would lead with service and, connect them with local charities, with housing authorities, with social workers, anyone to try to better their situation. If he looks at that and says, well, if your investor looks at that and says, well, I'm going to lose X amount of money before the LA court clears this unit, why not offer them $5,000 to get a moving truck and professional movers and pay the first month's rent and the last month's rent to get out of the way? It's going to go toward the cost basis of the asset, and he's going to be able to book it as CapEx. It's $5,000 in demo. The demo included getting the tenant out. He gets to book it against the basis. He'll eventually make that money back when he sells the asset. So think about it from those different angles of it's not just cash. Wow, they offered him $20,000 and they didn't go. So, I mean, it's
here in LA, we've created, Chad, you live in some places with some decent people. In LA, there's plenty, but there's this whole group of people we've created now. They're just professional deadbeats. And many times my experience is these type of tenants are professional now, taking advantage of the system, and many of them are doing drugs. That's a line that we drew once recently where, oh, you're doing drugs in the house. Well, now we'd call law enforcement and get you out. That was a different story versus a tenant situation.
And if you can get there and you can see, I mean, like, I don't know, I got hell with it. I'll say it on a recorded line. Your Fourth Amendment stops when a child's rights are being violated. Right. So you can circumvent Fourth Amendment and search and seizure law by notifying authorities that a child is in danger. And it's pretty easy to get through a front door. I've done it several times. But you can use Child Protective Services to gain access and expedite these processes. If you can see that a child is being harmed or illegal activities happening in the home, then you can speed this process up. So if they're playing dirty and they're not reasonable humans, then there's a time and a place for you to play by the rules they want to play by, and if you can't beat them, join them. Definitely not where I started. It sounds like you guys have really exhausted all effort.
Just getting more comment here in LA. I mean, this is a regular daily thing you hear about it. I'm predicting inevitably you're going to get the Tony Soprano types who are going to look at this. I mean by nationality, I just mean by professional criminals who will say, you mean I could just drag this person out of the house and beat the hell out of them, and now it's worth $50,000 more? You're going to get criminals if we don't find some solution to this problem that's more equitable and more.
That or worse, you're going to drive every landlord out of the state, and you're going to have socialized housing.
That too. Either one, either really good. So that's a whole topic, and I have to be a little careful in that subject matter. Okay, so Julie, we can talk offline about this too. I have maybe some other possibilities we'd talk about privately. Any other questions? I don't see anything else. I know we're getting towards the end of there. Any last ditch? I did put in the chat box. I'll put again the link to Probate Mastery if you want to participate. I have an affiliate link there for you. And if you're watching on the live stream, it'll be in the show notes. Where's some good books? I still keep getting a lot of questions on books. Okay, just throw out one or two real quick, Chad.
Teresa has one. So. And it reminds me, I didn't call him back. A friend of mine, Chris Prefontaine, teaches creative financing with ethics. He wrote a book called Real Estate on Your Terms. You can get that on Amazon. Brandon Turner, another friend of mine, he stepped down as the host of Bigger Pockets Real Estate podcast. But Brandon wrote a book called Buying Real Estate with Low or No Money Down. And that's a great book on creative financing. Joe McCall, another friend of mine who's kind of inspired me to get into lease options. Joe teaches creative financing and lease options with ethics. Pace Morby, I don't personally know. We have friends of friends, we have mutual friends, but Pace has a good reputation if you're interested in subject to investing. I think he's a good resource for that. But as far as specifically on creative financing, those are some of the better books for the more creative aspects of investing. Now, what I would say is if you can't tell me the majority of finance properties in your MLS last year, how they were financed, if you don't know, and you don't know the top 5 loan products that people are using in your market, and you don't know the underwriting criteria at the same level or higher than the actual originator does, I would challenge you to go do that. I have made more money in my real estate career on the buyer side just because other realtors said, well, you don't qualify for a loan. because they were just running them through the FHA filter. They didn't understand USDA, VHDA. Like there's just understanding how conventional financing products, how underwriters look at a buyer for a conventional financing product will get you into, you'll add 10% more deals to your buy side every year if you just understand real estate finance, not creative finance, conventional finance. So what is the difference between a portfolio loan and a loan that's sold on the secondary market? What is how does an underwriter underwrite on FHA versus VA versus USDA? Which areas is USDA eligible in your area?
I'm Chad Corbett. I'm the founder of Meg.
So with that,
I know that guy.
that Chad guys. Sorry, go ahead.
But the best way I know to build that skill set is find a lender that's a step above, invite them to lunch as many times as it takes, and ask them to just summarize what they know about each loan product and how it's underwritten. That will allow you it gives you a level of confidence, but it allows you to think on your feet, and you can save a lot of buyers that way. But you can also confidently talk to sellers about who your end buyer is, what type of financing the house will or will not qualify for. And probate specifically, a lot of homes, they're not VA eligible because of certain things. Like they have a wood stove and they don't have a secondary heat source. Is one of the things, that I've come across. A well casing is within 10 feet of a property line, so it won't pass a VA appraisal. It won't pass a USDA inspection. So we have to go with a portfolio loan. What does that mean? That means we go to a community bank and we ask them to put it on their own books and not sell it on the secondary market. So this person can have a home and they can get their deposit business. And like really having a full understanding of the whole of real estate finance is what I would recommend. Creative financing is great. It'll give you probably 25% more transactions next year if you know how to do those things. If you search Chad Corbett creative financing, you'll come up with probably a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube. There's one series that I did as COVID started to set in called Shift Happens. And episode 4 of Shift Happens, and Bill, you might be able to grab a link if you do Chad Corbett Shift Happens creative financing. That's where I showed you the seven creative financing tactics that are most used in probate. It's a 2-hour video. It would take me 2 days to teach the specifics of each of those, but it'll give you an introduction and you can kind of, let that pique your interest and then explore those further and some of the other resources. But those are some of the best finance resources and advice I have.
Well, great. So I put the link to that right now in the show notes in the YouTube. That's a great place. Also, I put the link to Chad's Probate Mastery course, and or on that website, he has the resource links to his podcast. So normally at this stage, I say, well, how do we get hold of you, Chad? And I'll say, well, I watch Chad almost every day. Go to the link in the box. There's probatemastery.com. And then I have an affiliate link if you want to consider his class or look into that as well. There's a hyperlink. But if you go there, you'll see on the top some resources, including his podcast recordings of his past episodes as well. I actually guest hosted a couple. I also popped in on a couple of those as well. They're a lot of fun. And I think that's critical that if you're going to learn this process, and as I said, in addition to a process, you need a community to be part of. And I'd love to have you join our community. I feel like it's partially mine too. As a member, join our community and let's work together on this process and encourage each other to achieve our relative goals. So look, we're over time, Chad. I could talk to you for a long time. I really appreciate so much of what you do for us as professionals in the business. You've really helped get my business on track. I just want to thank you for making time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm always happy to contribute to you, Bill.
Thanks so much. And for the rest of you, we do this every week. Thursdays, Probate Weekly. Thursdays, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream it on YouTube and Facebook as well. Or you can find it on social medias. I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross EXP on my social media. So you can go to YouTube, put Bill Gross EXP, and it'll pop up the whole playlist and a lot of these episodes and other probate material. Love to have you participate with us. Thank you so much. And as always, make this